welcome to Agile World.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Sabrina, Carl. And today we are here with Phil Rogers, who has been instrumental in building out a number of our resources. In fact, I have nicknamed him Fast Phil because he creates content so fast. But not only does he create content fast, he creates valuable content that's actually usable and has been used in many organizations. So Phil, welcome to the team.
Thanks, Grant. I'm very glad to be here. This is awesome.
Now, Phil, the first thing we're trying to figure out is, what the heck is your name?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I did live in Israel for many years. And so my Hebrew name is Gershom. So you see that on my LinkedIn profile. So for a while, when I moved back to the United States, I was using that first name sort of unofficially. And then eventually I flipped back to my given name, which is Philip.
Hang a minute, have I been tagging the wrong Phil Rogers in LinkedIn?
No, yeah, I think you're probably fine, but who knows?
It's all an experiment, Sabrina. Don't worry about it. It's a way to engage across the whole area. Just tag every Phil.
I mean, having multiple LinkedIn personas has worked well for me. So
there you go. I wonder what kind of photos you've been sending this Phil, Sabrina.
I'm just thinking I need to jump onto LinkedIn and apologize to the guy I've been tagging in all my posts. I'm really sorry. Do you want to join us?
It's a recruiting tactic. I get it. Yeah.
It's been crazy, but we've been. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, see, we're going to do this now. There's 3 of us on here. We're going to gang up on Phil.
I would expect nothing less.
Carl is claiming he's going to be quiet, but we all know better than that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you're quiet. What's going on?
So, who's going to speak? Is it going to be Sabrina or Steve? I'm bated breath.
I was just going to cough for a minute, but luckily I got the mute button. So Phil, what is how did you have a library of information? It's deep, it's thick. How the heck did you get that created, and why are you so willing to share that with the world?
That is a great question. I think, like a lot of things in life, it just sort of happened organically. So thinking back many years ago, just working at different organizations, as if I would leave one place and go to another, you leave these digital footprints essentially, right? So let's say, for instance, an organization is using Confluence or something similar. So in the best case, Confluence can be a valuable asset when it comes to just having information about, how do we do things? What's important to us? Why do we do what we do? All that kind of stuff. And so over the passage of time, I just got more and more in the habit of writing what some people would consider to be a playbook. And I want to be very careful, though, with that term, because I think a lot of people, it's easy to slip into this idea that's prescriptive, which it isn't. So we don't want to be prescriptive at all. But what I try to do when I write these types of things is to say, oh, well, you're in this situation, you could try this or you could try that, which in a way is the essence of coaching, right? Because we want to really listen carefully and with empathy to what people are telling us, and then when the situation calls for it, to say, well, given this situation, well, in the past when I've worked with teams, they found it valuable to do X, and so that's kind of how this playbook idea really got started. Was just having something internal people could look at. And another dynamic was, I often didn't feel comfortable linking to a lot of external content because there was one issue or another with it where it didn't necessarily feel consistent with what's in the manifesto, for instance. And so that was a big driver as well, just wanting to basically create stuff so we weren't sending people all over the internet into places where they were probably going to come across things that really aren't necessarily consistent with Agile values and principles.
Very cool. So since you're not prescriptive, we shouldn't call you Dr. Phil. We should just call you Fast Phil.
Yeah, I took steps towards the doctorate, but as many people do, I didn't finish it. So you can
So
skip the
do
doctorate.
we call you Master Phil then? As in,
Ooh,
you're
well,
our, sensei.
well, in the
Sensei.
Scrum world, there is this Scrum Master idea. To be honest, though, I never was wild with that term. I wrote a blog post about that, as a matter of fact. But I much
Can we give you a 12-sided dice then, and you can be the
Oh,
Agile
yes.
world's
Dungeon Master?
labyrinth master.
Oh,
that sounds awesome. Actually, let's do it that way.
why have I got in my head that we require lightsabers? Just
Oh,
like,
mine's
It's
in
part of the uniform, but we've got some
Yeah.
problems with customs.
mine's in the shop, actually. Yeah. It turns out the battery life is a real problem there.
Where do you take your lightsaber to get repaired anyway? So
Oh yeah, just across town, there's this. It's kind of like some of those shady characters in Men in Black, where just running stuff like off the cuff. Can't really advertise, but they do work on lightsabers.
is it just Men in Black? Look at Sabrina; she's wearing black too. So Carl and Sabrina, is that where you guys came from?
I'm a massive fan of Men in Black.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the shop you take your lightsaber to, does it just have the one song?
Oh well, why would you need more than one?
You're getting one
The
repaired.
Mos Eisley Bar song.
So Phil, we
think
want to
that's-
know a little bit about you. Where are you currently now in the world?
Yeah.
Obviously we know, but our viewers
Yeah.
won't know. So whereabouts are you in the world?
Yeah, I'm in Washington, D.C. So Steve and I are probably only, I don't know, between 12 and 15 miles geographically apart, if I had to put a guess. He's a little further out to the northwest of me. Or if you want to put it in strictly Washington, D.C. terms, I'm, call it 4.5 miles from the White House.
Oh, that's
Have you
cool.
walked by the White House lately?
I cycle a lot, so I've certainly ridden by it many, many times lately.
When you cycle, how many wheels does your bike have?
It has
two or
only,
three?
it only has two, only two. Yeah, I recently graduated from a tricycle, but I think Trikes have a lot going for them.
There's
I
no
always-
no doubt about that.
I always like the
So-
trikes that you could sit down in while cycling.
Yeah,
So
the
that
makes a
makes a lot of sense
yeah.
to me, because there's also enough space just in front to put a TV, and then you can just pretend you're at home.
Yeah, those are actually much easier on your back, as a matter of fact, recumbents.
Yeah.
If you're like me, I just stay at home. I just get on the bike and just stay at home.
That is a
it's easier
popular
that way.
choice. It is a very popular choice.
So
Certainly
I
safer.
need to ask the really pertinent question. How do you know Steve?
I'm trying to remember the year we would have first virtually crossed. Well, here's the funniest thing. So even though we geographically are not far apart, I don't think we've ever met in person, Steve. To the best of my recollection.
I don't think we have either.
We might have crossed paths at a conference and not known it.
Oh, or an Excel happy hour, or one of the events locally. I'm sure we've seen each other.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've been in the same space at the same time, but I don't recall I've ever shaken your hand. So yeah, and I reached out to you because
elbow
there you go.
bump.
There you go. Elbow bumps.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason I reached out to you is because I was looking for retrospective tools for a playbook I was putting together online, and came across this incredibly deep, rich Trello board. And it had somebody's name on it. I think it was yours.
It could have been.
I think it was your English name, not your Hebrew name. And so I reached out, and then I saw that you had this Medium page and this blog, and you had hundreds and hundreds of posts and pages of good information.
Thank you.
Crap.
So there's a qualification here: good information or crap. Okay.
Those are the options. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's happened, especially since we've gone virtual, is more and more people are producing content, and there's so much content out there that I don't think really applies to reality. So I think there's a big struggle right now where there's theory, there's the stuff that, well, I took a class, so now I'm an expert. And there's this, on the other side of the spectrum, I haven't really taken many classes, or maybe I have, but I've implemented this and I've used it, and I've gone through the valley of tears. I've tried stuff and I've gotten beat up for it because it didn't work right. So now I've learned to inspect and adapt, and I've improved it. And this is reality. So there's theory versus reality. And Phil, when I look at your stuff, I get the feeling it's mostly reality based. And Carl, I know it's a freaky concept for you.
No, as a friend of mine wrote an article about social media influencers in user experience who have no practical experience yet for some reason get listened to, and that's really a concern. But just, someone gets a job title in a large corporation and then suddenly they're on the podium at a big conference talking utter garbage. It's just embarrassing, and that's one of the reasons I before the Agile Tournament Reflecting, I didn't go to conferences because there was just too much marketing at them. I didn't really learn anything. And what I'm interested in, and one of the reasons I'm involved with all of this is peer-based knowledge, because I genuinely don't want to learn the hard way if someone already has.
Actually, Carl, I think you raise a good point, which a lot of us joke about it, but this idea of laziness where, hey, I just want to write this down once, so why have it in 50 different places, and I think that's an aspect of this that's really important to recognize, that we all kind of have our go-to things that we look at, because if you're looking in 10,000 different places for information, everything just kind of gets lost and muddled, and so.
We also don't end up with a common indice of language either. I do Agile, do you? What does that mean? And then you get something completely different from what I do Agile as, and this is probably the biggest malaise and problem we've got at the moment, is that everyone's like, we do a stand-up. I'm going, well, you don't have any chairs. So why are you doing these things? Because the artifacts of Agile are really interesting and they exist for a reason, but they actually all tie together. So if you're doing like these three things, but not doing these three other things, the three things you are doing have no value at all. So it's this I know, the fast food culture around professional services. We need to be careful that we don't end up as like, we did a stand-up at the beginning, and when we delivered everything at the end, you're going, what? When we delivered everything at the end, we had a show and tell. You're going, you mean you just did waterfall Agile? which seems to be what's happening.
Even with that description, you can't even put Agile on it. That's not even Agile on it. But you're right, there's a lot of content out there, and people are actually more interested now. And I've heard a lot recently from clients where they've actually turned around and said, I'm not interested in your certifications. I want your knowledge and experience. I want to know that you've had this experience and you've had success. And a lot of places are saying, do you know what, certifications are great, but actually we want your physical experience. We want to know what has gone well, what's not gone well, what did you improve, what did you change? They want to understand these things, and they want to know that the people that they're investing in have got the experience or prepared to say, we want to try this, may not work, but we can tweak it. And that's more and more happening.
So Phil, how do you feel about giving away your knowledge? I mean, you are giving away a huge part of yourself. How do you feel about that? And what do you want people to do with it?
Well, the beauty of it is I've dwindled away to practically nothing.
You are a wisp.
This is actually a hologram. I'm 100% virtual. 100% virtual. I mean, it's great. This out of body stuff is amazing. But in all seriousness, I think it comes down to a lot of what is Agile world itself is about. When it because these are great ideas and they're transformative potentially, but they can also do great harm if people kind of misuse or misunderstand or misapply the concepts. And so I think one of the most important aspects of this is, hey, look, we've had some success doing this, and we'd like to share this with you instead of bundling it with an expensive certification and such. Again, I'm not gonna try to tear down certifications per se, but that agile industrial complex side of things, right? Where it to a large extent, sadly, it has turned into a money-making operation. And as soon as money's in the equation, then other things tend to come along with it, right? And so I think what we're trying not to do is to be part of the agile industrial complex, instead to sort of break away from that and say, well, look, we do know certain things do work, they have worked, we've seen them work time and time and time again. Let's make that knowledge available and not charge money for it.
And the collaboration side, it's an opportunity for people to collaborate with us.
Yeah.
So that's the bit I absolutely love about this. And we're so glad that you actually joined us. We're so lucky.
Me too.
Never leave us. You're ours forever.
You're in the family now. We know where you live. No,
yes, we do. We do. We know how to find
Steve
you.
knows where you live. We just proxies.
So here's a question. This might make you squirm a little bit. Honest opinion, since you've joined, how have you found being with us? Because it's been quite a number of months now. We've kind of hidden you away slightly, but how do you find it? Open and honest here.
Yeah. Well, being heavily focused on the content creation side of the house, that just the way that kind of stuff tends to work, it's pretty easy to just kind of really just keep writing and publishing content, right, and just do it. So because collaboration is awesome and necessary, and it just so happens that just focusing on the written content side of the house, it is possible to move forward, to have people, give a look at things, but to essentially move forward almost in a vacuum. Once you've kind of agreed on the general construct for, hey, what do we want this to look like? Who's the audience? All those kinds of things. So once you feel like you've addressed that, I think that does tend to make this sort of thing easier to move forward. Of course, Steve and I, we haven't really touched on it directly, but we first started working on something called Public Agile. And so that too was an opportunity, to kind of flesh out these concepts. And so once I engaged with Agile World, Steve and I already had a lot of conversations about, hey, what do we think this might look like? And so I think this just became a logical extension of those conversations.
And just for context, Public Agile still exists, doesn't it? Because we don't want to lose an audience to create another audience. This information you've created is for people, so it's wherever they are, not wherever we are.
Yeah, I want to come back to the Trello board for a second too. So that public Trello board, I would have to say, of all the things I've done in my Agile life, that's probably the one I'm most proud of, because it just sort of started, simply and organically with, hey, there's lots of great ways to facilitate retrospectives. There are things like Retromet, which is out there in the world, which is awesome. And basically, I just looked at that and said, well, I wonder if there's another way, to share this kind of information. And so that Trello board has, been, I'm told, very, very popular in the Agile community and continues to be. And that, I think that really tags, aligns with the playbook concept quite nicely in terms of, free content. Try it, see how it goes for you. It really comes back to continuous improvement via experimentation.
Yes,
and it's so funny about your Trello board. I actually came across your Trello board before I met you, and I only clicked the dots. It was you. Yeah. 3 days ago.
That's perfect. And
it's amazing. And I've even got it up here now. It is absolutely amazing. You're right. It's a Bible. It is, and I just couldn't believe it when I realized it's like, that's Phil.
Yeah, that's Phil. That's Phil. And the Trello board, a link to the Trello board with the name and the links are going to be in the show notes. So if anybody's wondering what it is or what have you, go find agile-world.news. look this up and you'll see it in any of the podcasts. A link will be there to Phil's LinkedIn page, as well as the Trello board that he's talking about. And it is filled with wonderful, wonderful information. And you mentioned RetroMat. I first learned about RetroMat from Mark Grove years ago. You know Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it's just a fabulous, fabulous tool.
It is.
So there's so much out there for retrospectives, and Phil, you've done such a great job. Now, Phil, you mentioned in your spare time. What the heck? When do you have spare time? Because when I look at some of the stuff, because you do a lot of volunteer work too, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Sure. Until the pandemic started, I was volunteering at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, which is one of the most popular museums in the world. Of course, it's full of dinosaurs and other cool stuff. And specifically,
real dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, they're real. Yeah, they're we tend to only let the plant eaters roam around, because there's a lot of liability issues when people get eaten, and it really gets messy. And plus you have to keep so much bleach on hand in that situation that we're really trying to cut down. So
well, I mean, it's a good way to encourage teachers that students are not all that fond of to go and expand their learning and maybe not come back to school. So
yeah, so specifically there's a space in that museum called the Fossil Lab, which is so I'm sure many of us have visited museums where we've walked by a working laboratory, excuse me, where
I'm sorry, why did a moment of Ross from Friends just appear in my head? Do you have a keyboard that you like to play music on?
He wasn't making fun of you guys.
No, not at all. My schedule is intact. But so yeah, so you think of these working labs, which are enclosed in glass, where you can, think about it just from a kid's point of view, right? I can't even count how many times I was, working in the lab, and you would look up, from what you're doing on the microscope, and see one or more little people just, they could stand there for a long, long time and just watch, right? And to sum up, what we do in the lab there is a combination of preparing, basically fixing fossil specimens in some cases, what some people call fossil repair. Sometimes we create what are called storage jackets or containers for fossils of all sizes, from dinosaur parts, which obviously are big, to making little custom storage containers using foam and all sorts of other materials. In my case, I was mostly doing digital photography of very, very small insect fossils on the microscope, but there's a lot of cool stuff that goes on in there. So that's what I was doing pre-pandemic, and presumably very soon we'll be able to come back, but I haven't heard anything lately. So what I've been doing since the pandemic started volunteer-wise is called Crisis Text Line. And so if you're familiar with the suicide hotline type of thing, it's the same idea, except instead of being voice, it's all text, which, if you think about it, the need for that is huge, because a lot of different demographics are much more comfortable with texting than they are with talking. And so that experience has been really mind-blowing, in the sense that you think like the pain people are going through, you think you have some idea from reading different news reports and talking to people, but you actually don't, because the number of challenges that people are going through, it just kind of it boggles your mind, right? Because there's just so many different things that people are struggling with. And so coming back to that empathy side of things, that's just been an amazing experience. So that's what I've been doing since the pandemic. That's
shocking, and that level of empathy, I think, is necessary for everything that we're doing right now. So you're putting together all this content that people can use in their daily lives, or at least their business lives, right? Which is a huge part of your work. And so that empathy and making sure that it's valuable is hugely important. I think that's one of the things that takes the information that you're producing and that Agile World is producing, and changes it from the theory, which it doesn't have any empathy. It's just theoretical, and then the actual reality and the implications of how it's actually applied. So that's amazing. And the fact that you have time to do this other stuff is very impressive. I don't know how you do it.
Honestly, I don't really understand why writing comes as easily to me as it does in terms of speed. It just does. I think different people have different things that just feel sort of natural to them, and that just happens to be sort of my special sauce, I guess, is I can write things very rapidly. So that comes in handy when it comes to playbooks.
That's awesome, Fast Phil. So all right, so the reality of it in 2 minutes or one or 2 minutes, why should people listen to you? What is your reality, and why do you have experience in this?
So the when it comes to playbooks, I think the key is to really think about what are the most common pain points that organizations or individuals experience, and to surface techniques that are not massively complex, because there are lots of things we can try that could be helpful, but some things might be exceedingly difficult to learn how to do. So to give you an example, let's say for the members of our listening audience who are familiar with value stream mapping, hey, that's an amazing thing, right? but it's also not simple in terms of facilitating and working through it. It takes time, and a lot of cases organizations don't feel like they necessarily want to invest that much time in something when they're not entirely certain what benefit they're going to get out of it. Now, believe me, I'm not saying that people shouldn't do value stream mapping, because it can be really valuable and amazing. However, it is fairly complex. And so I think it comes back to there's a spectrum of options at any given moment. And so we have to come back to outcomes, which I think is another thing that people forget about, so the whole outputs versus outcomes, conversation is important too in this context. And especially when we talk about, a lot of people in the world of consulting, for instance, are painfully familiar with this, where unfortunately a lot of organizations are focused on what some people might call success theater, or similar terms, where it's like, hey, we shipped something, and well, great, so I mean, it kind of comes down to we're shipping more crap faster. Yeah, so what? So I think you have to come back to what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Our measurements that we have in place, what are they telling us? Is it useful? And so this all kind of loops back around to, hey, is this actually valuable? And do we actually know that whoever the end user, customer, person is that we're doing this for, that they actually like what we did? So that comes back again to the outcomes thing. Oh, well, look, we finished it in X weeks. Well, great, but they hate it. So what, right? So I think I think this metrics thing, it can be a real problem. Obviously, it's important to measure things, but you have to just take a step back and say, why are we actually doing what we're doing? Is it actually delivering value? And I think, unfortunately, that's one of the main things that gets lost.
Yeah. Now, Carl, that's kind of what you were pointing to when you were starting to talk about, Agile by the numbers or whatever. And, all these little things, if you're doing these 3 artifacts, but not putting it all together and understanding the value of everything, then what do you have? You just have a bunch of stuff going on, right?
Well, it's smashing together different ideas, which in some ways is interesting, but doesn't necessarily produce anything. So one of the biggest malaises in the whole of the business world, and I think in every human life, is that actually we try different things, but we give up halfway through. So we never really see any results. And so we don't know if we were successful. Well, everyone, sorry, everyone does it, as me included. And we think that there's some way that there's some magical point in what we're doing, that actually it will all fit together, that without me having to do any actual work, which is not true, because there's always a whole lot of additional things that we didn't know existed that need to be done. And I just think that we just need to be really careful with something like Agile, that we that we treat it gently, because otherwise we'll break it and never really get any benefit from it. And we'll spend, organizations out there at the moment are spending millions, hundreds of millions on implementing Agile, but they're doing it top down, which is the complete anathema of Agile. It's like saying, let's paint the town red, but let's start with blue. And you're going, what? What are you talking about? Oh, we need an undercoat. How many undercoats are we going to do? We're going to do 12 undercoats and then we'll get to red. Okay, how long will that take? And it's just, it's a complete missing the point of what we're doing. And I say in other shows, let's launch out into the shallows. Let's stop these massive change programs and actually just go, let's do something that works. And if I always used to build Airfix models as a kid, and I was really terrible at it because I'd never read the plans until too late. So I'd build all the sub-assemblies and then realize that they were meant to be joined together earlier before that, and then you have to get the scalpel out and butcher them to make them fit. It taught me that eventually I have to start reading plans before doing things, but I learned that over a period of about 3 years and spending a few £100 on a few $100 on Airfix kits that were useless. They weren't even funny. Like that, my favorite one was the Harrier jump jet that I left the pilot out of. It's how was I supposed to know that he was meant to be in the seat? Anyway,
well, I think you were ahead of your time. I think you were building an unmanned aerial vehicle.
Well, I was just so far ahead of my time, and then that's another excuse that people use when they blow off $100 million and deliver nothing. Well, we were experimenting. What?
Experimenting is good, but not with 100 million. So
yeah.
But you're right in what you're saying. Is actually the past couple of years, a lot of people have been burnt by Agile. They have been burnt by it because they haven't either taken the time and the resources to fully implement things. And oh, hang a minute, my mom and dad just walked in. Carl, you carry.
Bring them on camera. Well,
bring them on camera. So make it a family show.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think one of the challenges is, and that's where it gets to Phil, what you're creating is because you've implemented this in organizations. It's not because you read 3 books or took this class and now you're writing this material. It's you've implemented it. You've figured out what's more important than finding out what doesn't work or what does work is finding out what does not work. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Yeah. Sorry?
And not being scared to try something new. I think I've said this numerous amount of times. I'm not against certifications. I've got my own certifications.
No. Certifications are great.
The one thing that I wish people would believe is once you go and take these certifications, your learning doesn't stop. These certifications should be areas that open up your mind to think, I want more. And you carry on and go in and get more. And you play with it. And then you go get more information. There's too many people these days that see it as a stamp and think, well, that's my journey ended, where that journey is never ending. You're constantly learning on that. Mum and dad have
So
gone
Phil,
now.
quick question. Are you painting a bridge and do you need some help?
Yeah, I'm about halfway across. I think
because when you get to the end, you have to go back and paint it again.
Yeah.
I'm going to outsource.
No.
You live in DC. That's the town for outsourcing. So
It really is. I mean, we're so good at it. But
we're going to change every couple of years too. So everything changes.
Yeah, but coming back to books for a second, I would say the good news is that there are actually so many great books, that I've come across that I reference often, and which reinforce, a lot of things I'm talking about. What are we holding up there? Yeah, yeah. That would be. I mean, obviously, Carl's book would be the one that people kind of pull out and say, Bible, right?
Yeah, all embarrassing me, no end. All right, Comic Agile. I want to get that.
Actually, this one's probably more practical.
In Scotland, they have a terminology
Agile?
that says eubism, which means you. Yeah, no, that's fine. I could agree with that.
And comic agile is probably much closer to reality than anything else, than anything ever written. So about agility.
But,
well, I couldn't put all the expletives in that I wanted to in the books because there wouldn't have been enough pages. So
I'm interested. These books, if you were to give a top 3, what books would those be? If you were to recommend to anyone, what would they be? Your top 3?
Yeah, I would start with Derby and Larson's retrospective book. Partially because retrospectives are sort of something I consider a specialty. So that, that's one that for me just tends to be right at the top, because I think in so many ways it was so trend setting, so groundbreaking, because I think before they wrote that book, I think a lot of people had great ideas and tried things, but I think the beauty of what they did was they kind of laid out a thought process for not how you have to do a retrospective, but things that are helpful to explore. I think that's the real beauty of that book, is it has, various techniques that they talk about, and they tie those back into those, what you might call phases of retrospective. Again, it doesn't have to have phases or anything, but I think that was a powerful concept for a lot of people, and a lot of people still identify with it. In that Trello board we were talking about, it actually has columns that correspond with those 5 areas, plus a lot more stuff. And I want to also mention Ben Linders has been a collaborator with me on that Trello board for quite some time. So I wanted to also mention that he's been a great person to partner with. Book number 2 would probably be the book Accelerate. So for the benefit of anybody.
Or John Cotter?
Sorry?
John Cotter's Accelerate?
No, this is the one from IT Revolution, which basically talks about, this is where they realized they had this gold mine of data from the annual DevOps surveys, and they hired Nicole Forsgren, a data scientist, to help them comb through the data and say, it's great that we have this. What is it actually telling us? And really what they were looking for, and I think found, were patterns behind high performing organizations. So sure, a lot of it is the classic, how often do we deploy, what's the change failure rate? Those are all important metrics, but other things that they surface in that book are the culture, mission, stuff, but which frankly, anybody who talks about DevOps these days recognizes that it's not, it's not just automation, it's not just cloud, right? It's a lot more to it than that. And I think that's perhaps the most compelling aspect of that book, is it takes the data that they have and it says, well, the data is telling us the following, and they give you these great examples of patterns that they see across successful organizations. So that would be another one. And then a third one, also published by IT Revolution more recently, is called Sooner, Safer, Happier. And so one of the mind-blowing lines from that line is, if you're thinking about agile transformation, don't, because it gets back to this bottom-up, top-down, type of stuff that we were talking about earlier. And you can really tell when an author has paid their dues and has gone through many iterations of things that work and things that don't work. And so that book is full of really practical advice. So and right off the top of my head, those would be the 3 that come to mind.
That is awesome. And we're going to have links to all of those in the show notes again. So those will be easy to find. And I want to take a look at this second book that you mentioned, because I was not familiar with that, but IT Revolution, Accelerate, definitely going to dig into that one. And I love that you brought up retrospectives, because there's retrospectives, which are very different than lessons learned. Yeah. My experience is lessons learned are things that we talk about and then we file them away and never touch them again. And the retrospectives are, if something is not actionable, and like 1 or 2 things, not 17 things, but if it's not actionable, guess what? You didn't have a good retrospective. You're not going to do anything. If you're not going to do anything about it, it becomes a bellyache.
So I haven't sailed since I was in my teens, but almost everything I seem to have a sailing reference to is that retrospectives for me are very much about slight course corrections.
Mhm.
You know, and if we're not using it for that, why are we doing them? Because, you know, we're not learning from what we did, and that's the whole point, is that on an iterative basis we deliver, on an iterative basis we learn. Now those iterations will change, so that the learnings are not static, they can't be applied as templates, but they are relevant at the point when they were discovered, and that's the
Yeah.
real power of retros.
Hang a minute, guys. Can you hear that? I hear possibly a new series could come if I can convince Phil. Do the people want a retrospective series?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
Ask Phil on camera so he can't say
Yeah.
no.
I'd love to be a part of that.
Oh my God, I am so passionate about retrospectives.
Mhm.
I am.
Oh, this would be
extremely
awesome.
passionate about it. I love retrospectives. I
Yeah,
actually think. Oh, go on.
No, you first.
No, I was just going to say, I think that a lot of people, I mean, I've had experiences when I was back as a Scrum Master, I used to fear retrospectives to the extent I would fear them. I would actually be one of those Scrum Masters on occasion, just go, oh, the team are tense. Let's move it a sprint, because I fear them. But actually, then I realized that what could happen if you keep doing that and not allowing people to retrospect. And I've met some amazing Scrum Masters that I think it was a blessing a couple of years ago, where I met this team and we had this amazing Scrum Master where when it was retrospective time, they ran to the meeting room. They like literally were running like children going, it's retrospective time, run to the meeting room. They always had so much fun, to the extent they even were happy for you to record, like film their retrospectives.
Wow.
And yeah, I would love to do a series because it's fun, it's beneficial, and you miss that retrospective, things that can happen afterwards is unbelievable. But yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
just to segue off of that. So I think largely what we've been talking about are sprint retrospectives, the single team one, but I want to also mention the tremendous potential value of sharing outcomes from retrospectives to the extent the team is okay with it, with, you know, so you get this cross-functional, cross-team perspective, and that kind of feeds into a construct like a continuous improvement board or something that's more organizational level, because continuous improvement at the single team level is awesome, but imagine, you know, what you can unlock if kind of like what you see with the Spotify, you know, sort of health check kind of thing, where you collect data periodically on, you know, what are the pain points across teams, and then you know, if you actually go after those things, it can make a huge difference in terms of how happy people are, you know, in terms of feeling like their concerns are being listened to, you know, all those kinds of things. So I think it's important to recognize the tremendous value of the sprint retrospective itself, and the tremendous value of a program retrospective or a cross-functional, you know, type of thing, which takes a bigger picture view, often at multiple teams across an entire release, you know, all those kinds of things.
Phil, how many places have you done retrospectives? 2, 3, 10, 20, 30? What number's closest?
I guess it would probably, I don't think it's a massive number. I'm going to say 25 or 30.
Okay, so you've done retrospectives at 25 or 30 different places with a variety of teams and programs. So reality.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess is the point I'm making. So what have we discovered today? Carl, if we were going to sum this up, Sabrina, if we were going to sum this up, what do we discover today about Phil? What do you like Phil more now than you knew before?
I mean, I've decided we'll never ever let him go. If, you know, just to let you know, he is I mean, everybody that, you know, we all work together as one big team, but I've found even more amazing things. I think the biggest thing I'll take is I have to go on LinkedIn and untag a lot of these things.
I'll let them know.
That's okay. I'm gonna make a new friend.
So I think that it's depth and breadth of knowledge. So we'd already chatted quite a bit. I tried to keep it lightweight, unlike Steve, who's obviously sort of ghosting you. But but you know what you're talking about. It's very clear, and it's not because you speak the loudest. It's because you have all of the pieces that join correctly together. Yeah, and so obviously there's a little bit of me that's quite jealous of such an enormous amount of knowledge. But then again, you're giving it to me, so I'm not that jealous. I'm just very thankful, really, that you want to give it away and that you want to be involved with other people that just want to try and make things a bit better than they are. So that's my main impetus. And you are a dreamer. I think you're a dreamer, and I'm definitely a dreamer to be involved in doing any of this sort of stuff, because it's far and above.
Mm-hmm.
No one asked us to.
Right.
There was, I between myself and Sabrina, we kind of saw that there was a need.
Mm-hmm.
And we responded to that need, but no one invited us. And I think the people that maybe would have wanted to invite us didn't know that they needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the main thing. We're not directly focused into or leaning into the existing agile world. We're looking and leaning into the future agile world, which is the current potential participants of that world is over 4 billion people. So I'm quite excited about what will happen next.
Me too. I think to put this another way, I think really what we're doing here is storytelling. And when you go back millennia, storytelling is arguably the single thing that probably has helped people identify with each other, connect, do all sorts of things. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what this is. And I wore this Avett Brothers t-shirt for a reason, because if you don't know their music, they're master storytellers, and so a lot of the messages that they convey in their songs they just kind of speak volumes about who they are as people themselves, in terms of the things they care about, and what they do to try to make the world a better place. And I think the music side of the house is another area where there's huge potential there. And again, it comes back to storytelling, and plus the fact that our brains have this ability, when you attach music to words, it changes cognition in terms of how we remember things. And I think that's something we've all discovered in a coaching capacity is, hey, what are the things that help people remember and apply these concepts?
That's awesome. And Avett Brothers, they were just playing in DC, weren't they?
Yeah, they were out at Wolf Trap recently. We saw that show. Yep.
My friend Paul was telling me about it. So I missed that show. But anyway, I'd love to see it. So so Phil, I want to thank you so much. You're sharing so much wonderful knowledge. Carl, Sabrina, you created this amazing framework that has allowed people like Phil or Fast Phil in particular to create this fabulous information. And all of this information is being put out online. Phil, you're giving of yourself, which is really, really wonderful. And this is very valuable information that is based on reality. And everybody is welcome to share. We're definitely looking for volunteers and to help with this. But you've done so much fabulous work, and we're so grateful for you sharing all of this.
I'm grateful
more about your story.
I'm grateful to be a part of the team. You're all amazing, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.